Greetings, Mets fans, and welcome to the Happy Recap podcast for this recording on opening day, part two, as we are on April 5th of 2021. And EJ, I tell you, it's one of those things. I didn't expect to be standing here on the fourth day of the season undefeated. I didn't expect to be standing here winless either, yet here we are.
Well, happy opening day again. But in
Ish.
hindsight, I guess it could be worse. You could be the Oakland A's, who are 0-4 with a minus 26 run differential at this point. So in hindsight, not having an opening night on ESPN with A-Rod as a commentator, not exactly the worst thing for me as a Mets fan.
No, I mean, that was kind of the silver lining. The rest of the series being wiped out was a little bit more disappointing than losing that game right there. But certainly you had a situation where the team was on ESPN. It was going to be a national game, and for whatever reason, they assigned A-Rod to it. It was AKA the runner-up to own the Mets. And certainly it would have been an interesting day to have him in the broadcast, because one way or the other, you knew they were going to prod him probably about Francisco Lindor, a story which basically broke, the night before.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that A-Rod would have been prompted, and I'm sure he would have tried to have been as PC as possible regarding his attempt of ownership of the team. But all in all, it just felt like it was a bad idea all around to have A-Rod commenting. Mets fans, we were already aggravated at the fact that the opening day was going to be an opening night. We were already aggravated about the fact that it was going to be ESPN in general and not our beloved Gary Keith of Ron. And to throw A-Rod onto it was just a little extra gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, obviously the big story in all that is the massive extension that was quote unquote officially announced today by the New York Mets, of the extension of Francisco Lindor, who will be a part of the New York Mets for the next 11 seasons, including this one, whose extension doesn't take effect until 22. But certainly a massive victory for the New York Mets, a massive victory for Steve Cohen, and certainly the one transaction I think we wanted to see more than any of them, because it takes a really good trade and makes it epic by extending him and keeping him in a Mets uniform for ostensibly the rest of his career.
I mean, if anything, this says to the fans who were bemoaning the fact that the Mets weren't players in the Real Muto sweepstakes and saying that, oh, maybe Cohen isn't going to be spending as much as he had let on that he was going to be spending. Well, this kind of just nips that right in the bud, because as Cohen said in the press conference, I've said since day one that I am all in, and this proves that I am all in, and he is indeed all in.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And, it certainly, in watching the press conference earlier today with Steve and Sandy, the obvious inkling seems to be that there's a bit of a bromance now between our owner and Francisco Lindor. And you can't help but love that anyway. I mean, that's great when your player and your owner get along great, especially in a time where a lot of players don't trust ownership and vice versa. It's very exciting to see. I'm super excited. I feel really a lot better about having gotten a Lindor jersey. So I mean, I feel better about that purchase, certainly. But I look at this, and it is win-win. It should show Met fans that yes, this is a team that will spend. But it also, I think it shows that it's kind of what I've always hoped for. This is a team that appears to be willing to spend essentially wisely. They will bring in players that make them better, not just the big ticket item to have the big ticket item. You're not going to see a random claim on Jose Canseco on waivers just because you can, and get the player and play him whatever. This is a genuine situation of a player that will be the cornerstone of the Mets franchise, along with Jake DeGrom, who also, rather surprisingly, has had some discussions on an extension again with the Mets. And I think that you look at this guy, I mean, this is the face of our franchise, EJ, and he smiles a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this is the face of the franchise for the next decade. And I couldn't think of a better face to have. The guy is just an ambassador to the game. He's a great player. He on and off the field. He's the type of personality you want in front of reporters. He's the type of personality you want behind closed doors in the clubhouse. He's basically everything that you paid for. He is the quintessential ball player that you want leading your team for the next decade. I thought the negotiations, while it seemed like there was a point where I thought, okay, this isn't going to happen, but I thought the player had in his mind what he wanted, the ownership had in his mind what he wanted to give, and at the end of the day, they came to a happy medium, which is not something you see often in sports. I kind of got the feeling that Lindor wanted to be paid more than Mookie Betts. I thought that was kind of something that was on his radar. But at the end of the day, he got a deal that secures generations of Lindor financial security for years and decades to come and gets the New York Metropolitans a true position player face of the franchise that they haven't had since Mike Piazza. I mean, you could argue David Wright, but David Wright unfortunately had his career cut short. So it's been a long time since there's been a position player really at the forefront of this franchise.
Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, you have to go back to Beltran and you have to go back to Piazza. It's been that long since you've had players in their prime that are, Hall of Fame caliber, and certainly, arguments can be made that Carlos may have screwed up his Hall of Fame credentials with a certain incident in Houston a few years ago. But you look at the that type of player. When you look at that, this is a guy that won you expect to go in the Hall of Fame. And with a 10-year contract, we now expect him to go into the Hall of Fame with a New York Mets cap.
No
Uh,
doubt.
I
No
mean,
doubt.
I mean, that's special. I mean, you have a situation where, right now the Mets have, in my mind, at least two potential Hall of Famers on their roster in Francisco Lindor and Jacob deGrom. And that feels pretty good. And to some extent, I haven't felt that way necessarily about the New York Mets since 1986, when, certainly you had Gary Carter, who was eventually a Hall of Famer. And you had, really four players in 1986 you thought had a Hall of Fame credential. Unfortunately, Gary's the only one there so far. But we still hold out hope for Keith. Dwight and Darryl, probably not. But, certainly this is a team to be excited about. And even in the future, I mean, my favorite question of all for Lindor when he had his press availability last week for this was a player. One of the reporters asked, have you thought about the type of player that you're going to be at the end of this contract at at age 38? And he said, I'm going to be a bad mother effer, and I'm going to be like, I'm like, that's the guy I want. I want this guy. I mean, there's no question. You and that was the thing. This is what Lindor does. This is the power of Lindor. And that I started that press conference super excited and stoked and excited as I've been for the Mets to sign a player since probably since we got Beltran. And by the end of that press conference, my love for him had almost doubled. My man crush had grown like the Grinch's heart and how the Grinch stole Christmas. It grew two sizes big because he was just so excited to be here, so excited for his contract. And it was a combination, though, of childhood enthusiasm and maturity yet about the game, and it defied his age. And yeah, there's nothing I could say that apart from seeing Jacob deGrom on the mound every 5 days of this Mets team, there's nothing I'm going to enjoy more over the next few years than watching this man play every day.
Yeah, I mean, this is our usual prediction show, and I don't think in all the years that we've done a prediction show that we've gotten to really hype up a free agent or a trading acquisition the way that we're able to hype this one up. It's totally new territory for us because we've never had such a huge acquisition and long term locked up deal as we have with Lindor. So this is new territory for us, but quite frankly, it's territory I'm really enjoying being in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the one that comes closest was just before we started the show back in 2008 would have been Johan Santana, which obviously was a very big deal at the time, and obviously a name who goes in Mets history. But the reality of it is that, I used to joke it's like starting a small business in the recession. That's kind of sort of what we did with this podcast way back when. And so there's been a dearth of talent to truly get excited about coming in from outside the organization. Now, the good part is we've had a lot of rookies to enjoy the past couple of years, whether it be, somebody unheralded like Jacob DeGrom or somebody more heralded that like the number 2 starter for the Baltimore Orioles currently, Mr. Harvey, to, the Noahs and whatnot, and the Zach Wheelers who, you know, the Met fans are currently kicking themselves over because he had a good start the other day. We've had some good prospects and players to get excited about on their way up, but it seems like the ones that have eluded us. This is the type of player, and it's not even a commentary on ownership. This is just the type of player 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago we don't get.
Yeah, this is a player we don't get. This is a player that we half-heartedly attempt to get just to kind of appease the masses. But the reality is that we were never actually in contention to get the player. But this is a case where we went out, we got the player, we gave up some good players, no doubt about it. But we got the guy that we thought was going to be the cornerstone of this franchise for a decade. We got him first and foremost, and then we signed him secondly. And we made every effort possible to make it happen by opening day, which in fact was his deadline. So we are never going to let Lindor reach that free agent market. That was a scary proposition for us to have given away the talent that we gave away and then let this guy hit the market. Kellen was in no way, shape, or form willing to let that happen. And it's a great job by the franchise. It's a great job by the player. It's a great job by his agent. It's a great job by all parties involved to make it happen by today, opening day.
Yeah, and the other side too is obviously, if you're one of the other shortstops headed to free agency this winter, and certainly if you want to talk about an insult of an offer, you look at what the Astros offered Correa to stay in town. I believe it was the 20 million a year over 6 years or something like that, maybe 7 years, 20 per. It's like, I mean, that's not an offer. That is an insult. But all those guys have a lot more to look forward to, and it's all thanks to Francisco Lindor. And I think that it will show you that yeah, this is a man who owns a team and as a fan, and he's excited to see it win. And the Cohen era has begun. And here we go with the first game. And so let's look at this. I mean, certainly coming into today's game, we have a Mets team that has not played a game yet, but we've got Jacob DeGrom going against the Phillies' number 4 starter, and that gives me a good inkling that perhaps we'll get off to a good start here, EJ. So, if whether or not the Mets win tonight, when they start adding wins to the column, how many do we wind up with in 2021?
Well, so Vegas put him at 90, which I thought was a very conservative number. Obviously, I'm going to be a bit of an optimist here in where I think the Mets could be. I felt the Vegas over under number probably should have been about 93 and a half. I thought that would have been a more accurate. Granted, the NL East is going to be more competitive, but when it comes to the Vegas number of 90, I'm hammering that over. And overall, I'm coming in and I hate to. I know my buddy Sean texted me and he said, "I know I'm going to be calling you a shill after the prediction episode." I'm coming in 96 wins here, and I'm pretty secure in that number. What about you?
Well, I can tell you right now, I'm not as I do throw a few bucks down when I'm in Vegas, depending on what the odds are, and I put a couple on them back in 19 when they were kind of pushing from nowhere and had like 40 to 1 odds. But I it's a no brainer at 90 with the over. That no brainer to me whatsoever. 90 to me, 90 wins is some stuff going wrong and some players winding out for extended period of time. And I'm not talking a Cookie Carrasco. I'm talking about a hamstring pull for Lindor in August. I mean, that's the kind of injury I think knocks the Mets down to a 90 win team. I admit I'm always a little chicken with these things, and I pick a window, but that window is right in your wheelhouse. It's 94 to 97. And I lean towards the higher end of this. Now, time will tell. I mean, the Braves opened the season 0-3, but you know, I still think that they're a 90 plus win team themselves. Phillies, not so much. Nationals, maybe a 90 win team at most. But I think this is a division that will take 95 to 100 wins to win the division. And you could have two teams in that window. So it'll be very easy to see. Do I think this team wins the NL East? I'm going to go out on a limb. This is the National League East champions. But I'll admit there's probably a strong dose of bias on that from me. I think they're that good. I think they can be that good, but I'm also depending on a regression from the Braves that, 3 games is hard to tell if it's there or not.
My whole thinking about saying that they're a 96 win team, and I'm in agreement with you, these are the National League East champions. The whole rationale behind it is, let's face it, there are some very streaky offensive players on this team.
Yes.
In years past, we have not been able to survive when multiple members of the offense would go into a cold streak at a time. I feel like this team, the way it is assembled, that if you have 2 or 3 guys slumping at the same time, you have a very competent other 5 bats still in that lineup who is going to pick up this team. I think the days of Jake DeGrom going out there and striking out 12 and allowing 1 earned run, but still taking a no decision or even a loss, I think those days are finally going to hopefully be behind him, because this offense, the way it is assembled and the competent nature that we have of 1 through 8 in that batting order, on top of the fact of the depth that we now will have in the rotation as well. I think we can survive a Cookie Carrasco being out 6 weeks. And I think we can survive it with really not much of a blip. These are all things that we haven't had the luxury of in the past. And simply because of the depth that Sandy Alderson has instilled in this team, that's why I think that this is a 96 win National League East champion.
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly once the playoffs come into play, I always try not to predict the playoffs because anything can happen. A team gets hot. A team, certainly the Mets have been the best team in baseball and lost, the NLCS before 1988 comes to mind. So I mean, it's baseball's a version of any given Sunday, is the playoffs. So I think this is a playoff team. I think this is a division winner. We'll see from there. But some other bold predictions. Let's see how you are with these. I'm putting DeGrom at 15 to 20 wins.
So I have written down a couple things that I
Okay.
want to do, and I put down Jake 18 question mark. So that was the number that I was going to put at Jake. And
Nice wheelhouse.
it's a nice wheelhouse. It's a I'm going to go over the 18. I'm going to say that Jake finally gets his 20-win season, and I'm going to do it for the reasons that I just mentioned. I think the offense is going to finally give Jake DeGrom the run support that he has so grossly not gotten in years past. I mean, I think Jake could have potentially had a 250 plus win career if not for the offense that he had backing him in previous seasons. But I think this is the year that Jake gets exactly what he deserves out of the offense. So I'm going to put him over 18 wins.
Yeah, and I put him as the NL Cy Young Award winner again. And people are like, well, what about Walker Buehler? What about Bauer? They're both on the Dodgers. The Dodgers are going to be indestructible. That's the point. They're both on the Dodgers. You have 3 pitchers capable of winning the Cy Young Award on the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's called splitting the vote. And, now I think Jake will totally deserve it, but the power of LA is neutered somewhat by the fact that you will probably have multiple candidates there. I see this as Jacobs to lose.
Well, I mean, we saw it with Harvey and Jake, where Harvey lost some votes to Jake when he was Harvey. And it's definitely a reality that the splitting of the vote can absolutely hurt a pitcher when it comes to a Cy Young candidacy, just like the splitting of the vote with MVPs can happen when you have 2 all-star caliber players in the same offense. So I agree. I think Jake will win the Cy Young. I mean, just the way that he has looked in the spring, you don't see Cy Young pitchers look this good right out of the chute in spring training. And Jake is just, I mean, you say mid-season form, he is like peak career mid-season form right out of the gate in spring training. So I think he's coming out with just firing on all cylinders. And honestly, I'm more excited to watch him tonight than I am to watch the offense. And I think this offense is going to be pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah, and certainly with Degrom, I think the most fun Twitter account to watch if you're going to watch Twitter accounts during the game has got to be the pitching ninja, because this is if you hear a loud moan during the game, it probably is the pitching ninja because he's keeling over from the just because he loves Degrom like nothing else, and I really think that tonight's going to be an absolute clinic um, from DeGrom because of what we've seen so far. Staying with pitching, certainly a lot of question marks with some of the fan base who hate Edwin Diaz simply because he was traded for.
Right.
Who he was traded for. I am predicting a particularly dominant season out of the closer role for Diaz. How many saves do you put him at?
So it's funny, you and I did no type of show prep together prior to this show,
On
but
purpose.
on my list, I have Diaz 30 question mark. So I put it at that's the number that I think. And again, for the reasons I stated earlier, that I don't think he'll be coming into a lot of tie games. I don't think he'll be coming into a lot of games where he's coming in pressure situations with men on base. I think he'll finally be able to be in a traditional closer role where the Mets will be handing over a 2 to 3 run lead to him to preserve in the ninth inning. Because of that, I think he's going to get to 30 simply because he's going to have more attempts, traditional save attempts than he's had ever as a Met before. And I think that's going to benefit him to the tune of over 30 saves.
I went a little high on him. Part of it is, this is a guy who's saved over 50 in a season before. Now, I think that I want to put the proviso out there that this is based on him getting the right amount of save opportunity, because if the Mets offense does everything that it's technically capable of doing, uh, it's possible Diaz gets 25 saves this year because the opportunities are not there, and he's coming into a ton of 4 and 5 and 6 run leads simply to get work in. And we all know how closers do with that, not well. But my number is 45 on Diaz. And I am going to stick with that. I think that is very doable. Like I said, though, it is dependent on him coming into enough games where the score is close enough. I think he is going to he's certainly going to lead the National League in saves. I think it's very possible he leads Major League Baseball in saves. Edwin Diaz returns to, I think, pure form here, and potentially, at least votes wise, gives Jake a little run for his money in the Cy Young.
Yeah, I mean, I respect the number you gave it. I'm going to probably fall a little under, only for the reason that you stated is I think there's going to be a significant number of games where the Mets have a 4 to 5 run lead, and he's just coming in to basically shut it down. It's a great problem to have.
Oh, it
uh,
is. Yes.
as opposed to not having the attempts because it's a tie game or you're in a deficit. It's a great problem to have that you're winning by too much. But I think it's a great problem to have. So I'll put him slightly under that number that you say. But I do think over 40 is entirely doable.
Absolutely. What's next on your list?
So next for me is Alonso, 35 question mark.
35. I mean, we've certainly seen there's a deader ball, but that doesn't seem to be affecting him all that much. I'm going to go over that, and I'm going to put him at 42.
Okay. So my thinking there is I'm over that as well, and I'm above 40 as well. I'm in the 43 range, simply because last year was a slump year, and he was still on pace. If it was a traditional
Yes.
162, he was still on pace for 40. So, and that was with him slumping. And what we've seen out of him so far in the spring,
Is not
he's not
slumping.
he's not chasing those really bad breaking pitches outside that he has no shot of touching. He is not chasing those at all. And I think if Alonso lays off those and he gets back to really waiting on his pitch, and props to Chili Davis, because I think he's played a big part in Alonso not chasing this spring. I think sky is the limit for him this season.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how I look at it. Like I said, I think if you had the baseball that we had 2 years ago for 2019, I think he'd demolish his own number. I'm not saying he's going up above 60 necessarily, but I think upper 50s would be a possibility. I think he's that locked in. That being said, with a deader baseball and a different season, I think I like my number. Although I'm at 42, you're at 43. I just don't think we can be friends.
Yeah, I know we're kind of splitting hairs here, or polar
I'll meet
bears.
you at 42 and a half.
Perfect. I'll take the over. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what Pete could potentially do this year, especially with the protection in the lineup he's going to have around him that he hasn't had before, in the form of Francisco Lindor and Conforto's locked in, and I'm really excited to see. I think this could be a very, very special year for Pete Alonso.
Yeah, I think so. I think the protection in the lineup is going to help him inordinately much. I think that the fact of the matter is you have another. I mean, you have several guys in the lineup that you can put around him in Conforto. If you put him in the third slot, obviously you have Lindor ahead of him. You can put Conforto behind him. You can put Dom Smith behind him, and you have guys that are dangerous. And that's the beautiful thing. The better the batters you surround a guy with, obviously the better better pitches and the better pitch selection he's going to have. And the reality of it is, Lindor and Smith, etc., are all benefit Pete in the lineup. And it'll be interesting. I mean, how many Dom bombs are we going to see? I kind of put him around 25. I think he's got the shot of having a pretty good power year with a higher average than Pete.
I agree, and it's funny because I do have on my list Dom Smith, 27 question mark. So you are right in that ballpark again. I think he does have the potential. I also actually had put down Dom Smith AB's 500 question mark, making sure that he gets enough reps. Hopefully, he can perform well enough in left field that it warrants him staying in that lineup on a daily basis. We all know not having the DH is definitely going to kind of hurt him a little bit. He's going to lose some reps, but I still think you have the potential basically to have, I feel like, Conforto, Lindor, Alonso, Dom Smith. You have the potential to JD Davis, who I'm going to throw in. He's the last one that I have on my list. I have him 30 question mark. You really have the potential to have five guys there who could all be over 30 home run hitters, which is insane when you think about it.
Yeah, and I think I mean, I probably come a little under on JD, just because I see him as, being unfortunately one of the odd mans out in the lineup that he won't have quite the same protection, because I see him as kind of the number 7 type guy, which means he's going to have McCann behind him, which, McCann's certainly a better offensive catcher than what we've had in years past, but he's not Mike. So I mean, I think that he's going to have to do JD to get to 30 is going to have to do more with less than the rest of the guys. I put him probably somewhere in the 22 to 25 range, and that is dependent on his defense being strong enough to not replace him in the lineup at any given time for any stretches with Luis Guillorme.
Yeah, and I mean, I have Guillermo positioned as my breakout player of the year. So it's kind of tough for me to say that JD could get to that 30 while Guillermo is also breaking out, because if he breaks out, it's going to have to be at the expense of a couple JD Davis at bats. So hopefully I'm right about both things. Hopefully JD Davis, okay, let's put up 25 and let's have Guillermo also burst out. It's the best of both worlds. It's Tuffle and Backman over at second base all over again.
I think too. You mentioned Guillorme as a uh, breakout type player. I mean, I certainly think he will have a breakout season, but I think if I had to pick what I expect to be a breakout player, I'm going to go with David Peterson.
From your lips, man. I really hope so because I love the idea of that second lefty in that rotation, and I really like what I saw out of him last year. I like what I saw from him so far in spring training, and I mean, you've lost Steven Matz now at this point, and you need somebody to step in and replace him. And I mean, Peterson seems like he is the candidate to do it. So I hope you're right. I hope he does have a huge breakout year.
Yeah, and I think certainly, I think the Mets had a certain level of confidence that the level of play from Peterson would at least be close to equal, because again, this is not a team that needs to make budget cuts per se, wholesale in trading somebody like Steven Matz, who as a Met person and as a Long Islander you hate to see, but go. But at the same time, you got to look at it and say, Peterson's a guy that the Mets have confidence in. I have confidence in him. And I think he's got the potential to be a 12, 13 game winner.
Yeah, I think that's with this offense. Every guy in that rotation should be a double digit winner, in my opinion. I think this offense is finally going to back up what the pitching brings. So I think you're right. I think Peterson is absolutely a 12 to 13 game winning candidate.
So, as we wrap things up, anything left on your list that you feel we need to tackle?
Just where do they end up? So for me, I'm going to put this as an 85 season. I'm going to say they're going to get to an LCS with the Dodgers. And I know people aren't going to love it, but I think maybe the Dodgers have their number this year. And next year will be the year that we get to the mountaintop. But I'm not going to put anything past them. But for me, I say NLCS or bust.
I think NLCS is very doable. I certainly think it is always possible. Once you get there, you can get past the other team. It certainly does occur to me that waiting on the other side of the Dodgers could be the team in the Bronx. And boy, that's a lot to bite off, chew it in the same postseason. Go from facing the Dodgers to facing the Yankees in a week. But I think I tend to agree with you most likely. I don't like agreeing with you, but at the same time, I like agreeing with you. I don't like agreeing with you on this because we're talking about the Mets exit from the postseason. But what I look forward to is the idea that it leaves the Mets hungry and wanting more. It leaves Steve Cohen hungry and wanting more. It leaves Sandy wanting more and hungry. It leaves potential free agents either wanting to stay or wanting in. And I certainly think that the potential is to build a better team faster. Um, Not winning it all next year or this year may actually turn out to be a benefit, but quite frankly, given the opportunity, win the whole thing and screw that.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't argue with that at all. But I do think getting that close and not getting there would make Steve Cohen just ravenous with hunger to get there. So it would be really exciting to see what steps he would take to go beyond.
Absolutely. And we always have to assume, especially while baseball is in the bizarre economic situation it is thanks to the pandemic, that further trades like the Lindor trade are possible in future years, more so perhaps than free agents.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to think that there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline that we haven't even thought about yet.
Absolutely. And that's what makes it exciting to be a Mets fan. And, that's the best part is this is going to, my bold prediction, this is going to be one hell of a fun season. I
I
know I'm
totally
going
agree.
out on a limb there.
Yeah, I totally agree. These players, they're just easy to root for. They're easy to watch. They're easy to cheer for, and hopefully they're going to be easy to rack up a whole bunch of wins.
Absolutely. And when we next visit with you, we'll have a couple games under the belt. We'll be able to actually talk about what I know certain people, and they text me, they DM me, they expect me to say this. They're going to want to know our take on actual baseball actually happening. Until that point, LFGM. Let's go Mets.
Woo!